A fancy. Oh, there we go. Recording in progress. All right, fancy slideshow for you guys. Hopefully everybody can see that. If I
Yes.
maximize that. Okay, AI in the classroom. So that's what I was asked to do, and that's what I'm happy to do. And everything I say is as of yesterday. So today I'm sure things are different. Um, so just first a little bit about myself. Tom Andrews. I've been in the I changed department to epartment of economics and finance. So I've been here since 1992. So that makes me 30 years, 33 years in the trenches. And I just want to point out in the fine print that I am not an AI expert. So everything you see here, I would take with a grain of salt. So I'm just here to tell you about like what I've been doing and like what's working for me. Uh, Maybe give you some ideas about what might work for you. And as we go through here, if there's any questions or anything, just throw on your audio and stop me, and I'm happy to backtrack or elaborate on any particular thing. Okay, so first things first, just like a little bit about what I know in terms of my experience with AI. Um, I was actually in a webinar the other day with a an economist that I respect highly, and he said that sitting with a laptop with an AI machine on it is like having I think he said 100 Einsteins in the room with you. And I was like, well, uh, that's pretty interesting. So, what does Einstein do? Uh, he answers questions really well. If there's an answer out there, then the bot pretty much knows what the answer is. Really, really good at answering questions. They can also write really well if anybody's doing any kind of written work. There's a great chance the bot is doing that for you. I can tell you the bot writes better than me. And it also can generate graphs and images and videos, all kinds of stuff. And this might be the Achilles heel for the bot is like that you have to give it a place to start. So you have to give it an idea and then it can run with it. But without the idea, it's just sitting there. So I think of it as like a calculator, sort of. Just move this so I can see. Anybody here have one of these things on their desk? Like I used to. I don't anymore. But I mean that like that little box is an amazing thing. Uh, it's like a little Einstein, maybe not a 100, but a half one. That'd be great. But the problem with that calculator is like you have to know what all these buttons are for. So, I know what a few of them are, like that plus sign and, the minus sign. I get that. But like the further you zoom in here, like, what the heck is all that? Uh, I do like that, being an economist, I like that S and D one down at their bottom. But like really the question is like what is the question that you would ask that would lead you to hit one of these buttons for the answer? So to me, AI and dealing with it is all about knowing what questions to ask. So it's like you've got Einstein in a cage, and I think of my students as like monkeys like looking in at the Einstein. Have you guys seen this image before? Probably not, or because I had the bot generate this image this morning for me. I just asked it like, give me an image that shows Einstein in a cage, like at a zoo, but with the monkey on the outside of the cage. And so it generated this image for me. It took it like a couple of minutes. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Um, but does anybody see a problem with that image? Hearing no from the audience. Like my problem is like the monkey is talking to Einstein. Well, to me, it looks like it's talking to Einstein, but I don't know any monkeys that can talk. So I just went back to the bot and said, well, the bot actually asked me first, is there anything I can do better? And I said, yeah, I don't, uh, I asked it, can you make it so the monkey isn't speaking? And then the bot came back and said, like, the image I generated doesn't depict the monkey speaking. However, if there are any elements in there that can make it seem like the monkey is talking, such as speech bubble or expression, I can fix it for you. Just let me know exactly what you'd like changed. So I'm just going to back up one slide here. Right. So again, this is becoming the crux of the biscuit right here. How do you tell the bot how to fix that image?
It's really interesting that the bot told you you were wrong.
Oh yeah, no, of course.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like there's nothing in there that shows that thing speaking. Well, I mean, it doesn't have the bubble. So, Naomi, what is it about that that says the monkey's speaking?
Well, I think monkeys communicate,
Yeah.
so they may not speak the same language, but I do think they speak, just not the language you and I speak. So I didn't
Okay.
see that same problem, but I just thought it was interesting that the bot was like, you are wrong. You are not
Yes.
seeing what I
Right.
created.
Yeah. I mean, you could pick the thing apart, like, but to me, it's like there's something about the way that monkey's face, like its mouth is open and it's pointing. To me, it looks as if it's expressing a thought to Einstein, but without the bubble. Um, but if you ask me like exactly what I would have to do to fix that, it would probably be more work for me to tell the bot how to fix it than it would be just to move on without the fix, which is what I chose to do. But again, like this is kind of the thing that the bot is working on. You have to be very explicit about what you want. All right. So this is how I use it in class. The sorry, I'm just gonna move my guys over here a little bit. I don't know these bot windows. It's like what we want to do is take the bot and leverage it to our advantage. Um, every I got to figure out how to do these Zoom windows and put them in a place that don't interfere with me. All right, try back up there. All right, here we go. All right, so number one, like this is my big rule is don't give away the question to the students. If you tell the students exactly the question that you want answered, they're just going to plug it exactly into the bot, and the bot is going to give them a perfect answer. It might not be perfect, but it's going to be really, really good. So don't give away the question. And two, if you do give away the question, you should make it low stakes because they're going to plug it in the bot and they're going to get back an answer. So the only way that is useful exercise is if it's more work to plug into the bot than it is for them to actually answer the question themselves. So if you ask them, how long does it take my spaceship to go from here to the moon and back if it's traveling X miles per hour and whatever, whatever, and this is the gravity, boom, it's going to give you the right answer, or at least something like pretty accurate, pretty quick. Um, but if you ask them, like, uh, you know, what's the name of your favorite pet? You know, I could plug that into the bot, but I should probably just go ahead and answer that myself. But again, it's sort of a cost benefit situation for them. If it's a low stakes question, skip the bot, give them your answer. All right. And then the third thing is you want to try and ask questions that Einstein can't answer, which, the first time you read that sentence, you're like, wait a minute, Einstein or 100 Einsteins or whatever, they know all the answers. But it's not quite true. What you want to do is ask a question that the students will have trouble describing to Einstein in a way that Einstein would be able to answer it. So any question that is difficult to articulate will make it difficult for the bot to generate an answer. Okay, so this is all kind of high level stuff. So I'm just going to bring it down to where I live. So in terms of economics, this is the question I'm going to give them. So provide a complete economic analysis of the following article. So that's my question. That's the only question I use in my class. Uh, and so you're putting some words in the monkey's mouth, and they can throw that at the Einstein, but the Einstein is going to come back with something like, "Can you please explain to me exactly what you mean by that?" So there's two parts. You can feed the article into the bot and the bot will give you an economic analysis, but by and large, the economic analysis that the bot returns will be garbage. And I know that because I've seen it done over and over and over again. And in terms of economics, the bot doesn't know what it's talking about. And it doesn't know exactly which part of the economic analysis that you are really interested in. So you can refine your prompts to get into the detail of telling Einstein exactly what you want, but at some point, it's going to be easier for you to just do the analysis yourself rather than figure out how to ask the bot to do it. So that's been my principal way of moving forward on this. So what I call deliberate practice and authentic assessment. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a real world problem and I'm going to say, provide a complete economic analysis, right? So it doesn't get any more real than that. The problem with that is it's also very difficult. Uh, and it is something that they can't learn like instantaneously. It's not like you give them a fact and they just return the fact. Like it's a process. So that would be like saying, learn how to play basketball. Well, okay, you got to learn how to dribble and pass and shoot in various places and pass in various ways and get in position on defense. So there's a lot of pieces involved. And what you want to do is just build up to the whole thing a little bit at a time. So here's an example of authentic practice that I give them. So again, this would be a low stakes practice assignment. And all it is, it just asks them to provide an analysis of the video that there's a link to. And then there's a little image down below that shows what their answer should roughly look like. So in this case, it's a production possibility curve. They have to put one good from the video on the main or on the horizontal axis and find another good for the vertical axis that made the list of resources and the economy. And then they're referencing this video the whole time. Um, so the video is about a mechanical nut sheller that's being operated in West Africa, I believe. And so they have to watch the video and try and glean the economic content from that and then put it in a graph. Then what they do is record a video explanation of their model. And then that gets shared with the entire class. So, and again, this is all low stakes. So after they've done their analysis, it gets posted to VoiceThread. I don't know if anybody is familiar with that. Um, but this is a wonderful tool that the university makes available to us. And what it allows is students to practice a problem, but then the practice becomes public. So typically, if we do a homework assignment, students or instructors assign the assignment, students do it. Uh, um, but they don't get to see what each other did. In this case, the students make a submission and then everybody gets to see what everybody else did. So these are graded in terms of incomplete or complete, and they get credit basically for practicing. So I don't care if they did it right, so long as they made like a reasonable attempt. So I'm just going to put one up. So if you were a student, after the assignments were submitted, I would hit a button and then you get to see what everybody did. And then if you click on anybody in the gallery, their submission is going to come up. So here's one by Carly, uh, forget her last name, S. So this is what she did. Carly Slavin, there it is.
So here are my diagrams. So first I have the market diagram. The price is $2. The amount produced is 1.5 million pounds, and the amount of producers is 3,000. And then on the short run cost diagram, the MC is seed and labor, the ATC is seed, labors, land and equipment, the ABC is seed and labor, and the AFC is land and equipment. And on both of these graphs, the good is bok choy. Now on the PPC, the good number one.
Okay, so just a note here. One is the image that's up at the top. She create that entire thing using Microsoft Word drawing tools. Those images do not appear anywhere on the internet that look like that. Those are hers. That's like her art. Um, so she drew every line herself. The numbers that you see associated with each graph, in this particular example, I think in the assignment I gave them numbers to work with, so they just needed to figure out what they would plug in which spot. Uh, and then the paragraph that's down at the bottom, I think she's essentially reading that right here. So she wrote that. And again, that paragraph description doesn't appear anywhere on the internet. So it completely conforms to the graphs that she drew that also don't appear anywhere on the internet. So the bot cannot do the top part. I suppose if you fed the image into the bot, it's possible that it could do something for the bottom part, but I have not seen that successfully done at this point. Of course, that's today. Tomorrow, things might be different. But I'm just going to move forward. So that's
bok choy, and good number 2 is corn. The resources are land.
So that's a VoiceThread assignment. So everybody gets to practice those several times. And then after we do a bit of practice, then comes the high stakes assignment, which again is provide a complete economic analysis of the following article. And then there's 3 parts to the assignment. They have to write a 3-bullet summary, construct appropriate graphs, and then write a 1-paragraph explanation of whatever it is that's going on in the graphs. So I'm just going to walk through each part of that. So first of all, it's an authentic assessment because I just pulled a newspaper article. I get a video from somewhere or New York Times or NPR or something, and every student does the exact same article. So 3 parts, start with the bullet points. So this is just a 3-bullet summary of what was going on in the article. In this case, it had something to do with disruption in the coffee market in some country. Now, here's the thing. The bot can do that summary. Like that right there is like doing, long division by hand instead of using a calculator. So I actually encourage the students to use the bot because I mean that right there is what it's good at. Not that they shouldn't read the article, but our students struggle with writing and the bot does not. So if you know what question to ask the bot, use the answer. So that's this. No, not every student uses the bot there. And a lot of times you'll get a summary that's complete garbage and you want to say, oh, why aren't you using the bot? Because the bot would be much better than what you just did. Now, that might get me in trouble with English professors. I don't know. But that's kind of like if you're a math professor, if you say you can't use the calculator for this, but then every other place they go, they can use the calculator. At some point, you have to be just like, all right, there's a calculator. You better learn how to use it. All right, the second piece, so the graphs they have to draw by hand. So those are all done using Microsoft Word, but I also asked them to put in realistic values for price and quantity. Let me just zoom out. So that's another spot where the bot is really useful. So in the old days, I would have them make up numbers and then I would use Google to get numbers. But the problem with Google is, it just sends you a link which may or may not take you to the number that you want. Whereas if you go in the bot and say, what is the quantity of coffee produced in Kenya or something in 2023, it can probably give you an answer. It might not be precise and deadly accurate, but it's probably going to be reasonable. And if nothing else, it gives the students a frame of reference for what might be true. So the quantity in the market, the prices in the market, the number of sellers in the market, those are all things that I force them to use AI to look up. Personally, I suggest Perplexity AI only because it gives you an answer, and then it also gives you the source of whatever its answer was. So you can click on a link and say, okay, it was 7,000 sellers, and it'll explain exactly where it got that information, and you can double check your answers and make sure they're reasonable. Um, so sometimes it will give you an answer that is completely out of line with what you were asking for, but then you can just refine your prompt and it will generally give you something. So again, what I'm looking for them is to have some concept of what's going on in the world, as opposed to just making up a number, or worse yet, in my number, just putting in a symbol like Q1 and Q2 or P1 and P2. I do think it's useful for them to have an idea what realistic prices are for coffee and how much coffee is being generated and how many people are involved in this market. So that's another place where we can use the bot. And then the last thing is generating a explanation of whatever was going on in the model. And this is another spot where the bot will fail every time. Number one, because it can't read the graphs. Number two, if it can read the graphs, it doesn't know the order that things happened. And it doesn't necessarily use the language that I'm using in the classroom. So I spend a lot of time teaching the students how to write these analysis paragraphs, how to explain what's going on in the thing, and then all they have to do is execute what I've told them to do, which is less work than trying to explain to the bot how to do the explanation of the paragraph. I don't know if that makes any sense. Um, so two places to use the bot, and definitely two places not to use the bot. It's kind of where we are. And I sorry if I'm going too fast here, but towards the end, AI in action. So for me, number one rule is don't give away the question. And then number two is the more authentic your questions can be, and the less they're associated with synthetic solutions, the better off we're going to be. Uh, Love is the answer, but what is the question? All right, so that's my talk, Naomi. Hopefully, you guys have some questions.
Folks, please feel free to just unmute and jump into the
Jump
conversation.
in.
Okay, I'll go.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So it's clear that you've been doing some exploring in terms of like what parts of the work that you do in your teaching the AI tools can replicate pretty easily versus ones that you have found it doesn't do as good a job. Um, how much time and effort did that take for you? And how are you staying current in terms of AI tool changes?
Okay, two questions, so two answers. So the first one, like how much work was that for me? The answer is for me, it wasn't very much work. And it's because I was doing most of what you're seeing up here before the bot came along. And so really, I was worried that the bot would undermine what I was doing. But what I have found, or at least in the past 3 years, that the bot has not been capable of doing it. So not that the students haven't tried, but what'll happen is, when they submit their work, you read it and you can immediately tell that, the bot did this. They'll start talking about exogenous shocks, like anybody who's 18 years old knows what an exogenous shock is. Um, and it won't be well connected to whatever's going on in the graph. It's just like, a paragraph of eco bull, beep, beep, beep. So that's pretty easy to see through. Uh, and then in terms of like, researching what the bots can do, like this is the thing that eats at me a little bit and keeps me up at night. And that is like, okay, so far so good, but realistically, the bots are advancing very fast, and I don't know that out of personal experience. The only reason I know that is because that's what everybody says, right? The bots are going, the bots are going, the bots are going. Like the bots are going to be driving our cars. The bots can answer every question you can think of. Um, so I think that's like a full-time job, just trying to keep abreast of what the bots are capable of. And I already have a full-time job. So Tom, maybe that's your job.
I
Uh,
have a full-time job too.
you have a full-time job, right? So there needs to be like, but then it's, the other issue is there's all different versions of the bot. So this is the other thing that bothers me. You have the free version of the bot, which I can mess around with, but then there's the paid version. And I'm not buying every paid version just to test it. So I'm wondering, is there a paid version of a bot that can use Microsoft Word to generate an image? Or is it just going to be generating images? So, like, for example, like the supply and demand graph, I just went yesterday to check and see if the bot can generate a supply and demand graph for, a drought, I think, in a peanut producing country. And I asked the question, and sure enough, it did. Like, it came up with a big red X. Uh, Uh, but then I started asking it probing questions, like, because it had some strange numbers on the side. It was like 100 and 5,000. And I said, well, where do these numbers come from? And then it said, well, they're commonly used in supply and demand frameworks. I said, well, can you be specific? Like, what is that number? And it said, well, yes, the demand curve is, 5,000 minus 100Q. And the supply curve is, minus 100Q or whatever it was. And so that, it was using literally textbook formulas to generate a supply and demand graph that I asked specifically for what's going on in Africa. So like it didn't do what I wanted it to do. And again, I was like, well, I could probably be more specific about what I want, but at some point it's more work to ask the question than to just draw it out myself. So I think that's kind of where we're going to be, no matter how good the bots get, at least at this point, it's hard for them to know what you want. Um, so I'm kind of pinning my hopes on that. If that changes, then really we're out of work, which it's like at the end, like I'm pushing 60, so hopefully it doesn't move too fast.
Tom, I have a question too.
Sure.
It's just a really quick one. Because I use Padlet the same way that you use VoiceThread. I'm
Yes.
wondering, in VoiceThread, do they have to post, like, do you have a setting where you have to make them post before they read everyone else's or watch everyone else's?
Yeah, so I actually I used to use Flip, but then Flip
Yeah.
disappeared, and
I
then
know.
considered Padlet, but I ditched that for two reasons. One is it doesn't link to D2L like VoiceThread does.
Oh,
So the beauty of VoiceThread is, from my perspective, is you can look at their thing and just click complete or incomplete, goes right into your gradebook,
okay.
and you can also add rubrics and all kinds of stuff like that. So to me, the functionality for VoiceThread was just better. And you can shut the whole thing off until you're ready to turn it on and let everybody see. So for me, I have a due date and an end date. And once the end date passes, then it becomes visible for everybody and no more submissions can come in.
Okay. Thank you.
Which is like really important because you want them to practice before they see the answer. If they see what somebody else does, they'll just do whatever that person did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they just wait. Nobody wants to be first. That's a big problem.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? I know we're at 3 o'clock, but
Okay.
Tom, thank you
Yeah.
so much. The thing that I'm walking away from, I've been talking a lot about how students need to need knowledge in order to critically
Yes.
evaluate whatever the AI tools generate.
Yes.
I really like the point you're making that they also need this knowledge to actually write the right prompts that give
Yes.
them what they need. Like you can't just wake up and write a prompt that makes sense.
No.
you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
So
you have to know, you have to have some context in order to be able to. So that, this is one of those things I was talking to another faculty member with about. It was at the president's inauguration, but I was talking about economics as a major, which I love because it's not too specific. It's really general. Like you have to know like what's out there and to be able to use these tools. Whereas some other industries tend to be really focused on a particular thing, which is going to be really adaptable to the bot. So for example, finance majors and something like that. I mean, the questions are really specific and the data is really good and the bot's going to be really good at answering those things. But more general type questions, which is what universities are about, right? It's like you're trying to learn about a lot of things, right? That sort of broad-based knowledge, I think, is going to be super critical going forward.
right. Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I will stop the recording now.
Okay.